The sun was sinking low over the village of Abagwi, painting the red earth in shades of dying gold. The baobab tree at the edge of the fields, the oldest in the village, stood like a giant shadow, its hollow trunk gaping like a mouth that had swallowed centuries. Children were warned never to play near it. But children never listen. That evening, two sisters, Nia and Tumi, chased a cloth ball across the fields. The ball rolled toward the baobab's roots, where the earth was cracked and soft. As Tumi bent to pick it up, her small hands brushed against something that wasn't soil. It was cloth, decayed, rough, and strangely warm. Curiosity fluttered in her like a moth. She dug gently, revealing a small wooden doll with skin darkened by age, its head wrapped in faded fabric, and its eyes, two small cowrie shells, staring blankly upward. "Look, Nia, someone buried her here." Nia, older by 3 years, felt something cold pass over her skin. "Put it back to me," she whispered. "Mama said this place isn't for us." But Tumi only smiled. "She's pretty. Maybe she's lonely." The wind rose suddenly, making the baobab's branches creak like bones. The sky dimmed faster than it should have, and in the fading light Nia thought, just for a second, that the cowrie eyes moved. That night, the sisters slept in their small clay hut. The doll sat by Tumi's bedside. And sometime before dawn, Tumi began to hum, a tune no one had ever taught her. By morning, the song that had echoed through the hut was gone. The rooster crowed, the sun burned through the mist, and the small clay home of Nia and Tumi smelled of smoke and maize porridge. But the doll remained, sitting upright on Tumi's straw mat, its cloth torn, its tiny arms raised as if reaching for the sun. Their mother, Mama Kito, noticed it first. She frowned deeply. "Tumi, where did you find that thing?" Tumi's eyes were still sleepy. "By the baobab, Mama. She was buried. I think she belongs to us now." Mama Kito's breath caught in her chest. The pot she was holding slipped from her hands and cracked on the floor. She knelt, touched the doll's face lightly, and felt the faintest pulse beneath the wood. Without a word, she took it outside and threw it onto the fire pit. But the flames refused to take. Smoke rose, but the doll only darkened, its shell unburned. From the shadows of nearby huts, the elders watched. One of them, old Mother Zimbi, hobbled forward, her back bent and her eyes blind but still seeing. She spat into the dirt. "That's Nakwi's doll," she whispered. "The witch who bargained with death himself." The crowd stirred, uneasy. The air felt heavier. Nia held Tumi close. "Who's Nakwi?" she asked. Zimbi's white eyes turned toward the baobab tree. "Long before you were born, child, there was a woman who wanted to live forever. She offered her youth to the river spirits, but they demanded something in return, a vessel to house her soul when her body died. So she made a doll, wrapped in her own hair, stitched with her skin, filled with her last breath. When the villagers found out, they buried the doll beneath the sacred baobab. They said the spirits would keep her there forever." The elder's voice dropped lower. "But that was long ago, and the earth forgets." That night, Mama Kito locked the doll in a clay jar and buried it near the back of their hut. She prayed aloud, for safety, for her daughters, for the silence to hold. But silence doesn't last in Abagwi. The next few days brought strange happenings. Goats refused to eat. The village well turned cloudy. And Tumi, sweet, soft-spoken Tumi, began speaking in her sleep. First it was only whispers, then words, then voices, many voices. One night, Nia woke to the sound of her sister's laughter. Foreign. Tumi sat by the window, the moonlight wrapping around her small frame. The doll was back in her arms, though no one had seen Mama Kito dig it up. "Tumi." Nia's voice trembled. "What are you doing?" Her sister turned slowly. The cowrie eyes of the doll glinted like tiny mirrors, reflecting the moon. "She says the baobab is lonely," Tumi murmured. "She says it misses her." Nia couldn't speak. The wind pressed against the hut, carrying faint whispers, too many to count, all coming from the direction of the sacred tree. Days turned into weeks. The harvest festival came and went, but no one danced near the fields anymore. Birds stopped nesting in the baobab. Then, one afternoon, Nia saw something that froze her heart. Tumi was sitting in the dust, brushing the doll's hair with an old wooden comb. As Nia watched, the comb began to move on its own, back and forth, gentle as a mother's hand. Nia screamed, but Tumi didn't even flinch. Later that night, Mama Kito gathered the elders. They sat around the fire, the flickering light painting their faces in orange and shadow. "The spirit has awakened," said Zimbi. "If the doll was unearthed, it means the witch's soul stirs again. She seeks a new vessel, a new body." "You mean my daughter?" Mama Kito whispered. Zimbi nodded slowly. "Once the doll chooses, it will not rest until the soul is claimed." The fire cracked. Sparks rose like tiny spirits in the night. And far away, under the baobab tree, the wind moaned, carrying a lullaby no one had heard in generations. The next morning the doll was gone. Tumi too. Only her footprints led toward the sacred tree. The wind had begun to change. Every evening, the breeze that once smelled of charcoal and mango blossoms now carried something else, a faint odor of decay. Goats refused to graze near the baobab. Birds no longer nested on its branches. And children, once daring enough to play there, now crossed themselves with trembling hands whenever they passed by. But for Nia, the tree had become a calling. Each night she dreamed of Nakwi, the witch who, according to village tales, had been buried alive beneath the baobab centuries ago. In her dreams, Nakwi's voice came in whispers, like sand hissing against stone. "You freed me, little one. Now we are bound." Nia would wake up drenched in sweat, her small body trembling. The doll, once just a dusty relic, now spoke when the world went silent. First it was subtle. Hum. Laugh. A whisper so faint she thought it was her mind. But one night, when the moon was the color of blood, she heard it clearly, from the corner of her room. "Nia, are you afraid of me?" The doll was sitting upright on its own. Its head tilted slightly. Its wooden eyes, carved with centuries of rage, gleamed faintly in the dark. By day, Nia grew pale and distant. Her mother, Tumi, watched her daughter change, the laughter gone, her eyes hollow. The villagers whispered that the girl was cursed. One woman swore she saw Nia talking to an empty chair near the river. "Maybe she found Nakwi's doll," someone murmured. That name, Nakwi, was never spoken lightly. Tumi didn't believe the gossip. She told herself her daughter was just tired, that she'd outgrow this strange phase. But when she went to fetch water one morning, she found tiny handprints burned into the clay near their hut, not in dust but in ash. That night, Tumi prayed harder than she ever had before. One evening, after the cattle were brought in, Nia disappeared. No one saw where she went. But Tumi, following the faint echo of humming, found her under the baobab tree, sitting cross-legged, the doll in her lap, eyes rolled white. The wind circled violently around her like an invisible storm. "Nia!" Tumi screamed, running forward. "Come to me, my child." But Nia didn't move. The ground around the tree began to tremble, the roots pulsing like veins. And for a brief moment, just a flicker, Tumi saw a figure behind her daughter. A tall, thin woman with hair like tangled vines, her skin cracked and dark as the earth. Her mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "She is mine now," the figure hissed. Tumi fell to her knees. When she blinked, the apparition was gone, but the doll's eyes still glowed faintly red. Nia stood up, smiling blankly. "Mama," she whispered, "Nakwi says she wants to come home." Desperate, Tumi went to the old healer, a blind man named Koro, who lived beyond the maize fields. His hut was filled with bones, dried herbs, and the thick scent of smoke. He listened in silence as Tumi told him everything. When she mentioned the baobab, his face went pale. "Child, that tree is no longer a tree," he said softly. "It is a grave." Nakwi was not just a witch. She was betrayed, buried alive with her magic intact. Whoever touches her remains, awakens her hunger. He handed Tumi a small gourd filled with red powder. Burn this at the base of the baobab at sunrise. And whatever happens, do not look back. But Tumi, trembling, asked, "What about my daughter?" The old man's cloudy eyes turned toward her. "If the spirit has entered her, then you must decide which one you love more, your child or your peace." Tumi ran home in tears. The following night, the moon vanished completely. Darkness spread over the village like a living thing. Dogs howled, drums fell silent, and the air felt heavy, as if the sky itself was watching. Inside their hut, Tumi found Nia sitting before the fire, clutching the doll tightly. Her voice had changed, deeper, layered, unnatural. "You shouldn't have gone to the healer," she said without looking up. "Nakwi doesn't like that." Tumi's heart pounded. "Nia, please," she whispered. "Put it down." But Nia began to hum, that same ancient lullaby from the night she unearthed the doll. And as she hummed, the flames in the fire pit turned blue. The walls of the hut started shaking. Outside, the baobab's roots began to push through the soil, twisting like serpents, slithering closer to their home. Then a voice filled the air. "You freed me once, child. Now I will free you from this world." Tumi grabbed her daughter, shaking her shoulders, but Nia's eyes were gone, replaced by deep black voids. She smiled, and when she spoke again, it was Nakwi's voice. "Do not fight, Tumi. You left me to rot in that tree. You all did." The hut erupted with wind. Mats, bowls, and ash spun around them in a storm. The doll floated from Nia's lap and hovered midair, its mouth cracking open with a sharp snap. Beneath them, the ground split, revealing faintly glowing bones under the earth. Tumi screamed and pressed the gourd Baban Koro had given her to her chest. She tore it open and flung the red powder into the fire. Instantly, the blue flames turned crimson, bursting upward like a pillar. Nia collapsed to the ground, motionless. Outside, the baobab groaned like a wounded animal, its trunk cracking open. From within, something began to crawl out, a skeletal form with hair of roots and eyes like burning coal. As Tumi knelt over her daughter's limp body, the figure emerged fully, towering, robed in tattered shadows. Nakwi had risen. Her voice echoed through the night, deep and thunderous. "You thought time could bury me. But every mother buries her pain, until it grows too strong to stay beneath the soil." The wind howled. The ground trembled. And all the villagers, waking from their homes, saw the impossible sight, the baobab tree weeping blood. Tumi held Nia tight, whispering prayers, her tears mixing with the dust. "Take me instead," she cried. "Leave my daughter." Nakwi paused. Her hollow eyes softened, for a heartbeat. Then she reached out her hand, touching the doll, which still hovered between them. "Then you will carry me," she said. And with that, Nakwi's spirit surged forward, disappearing into Tumi's chest in a flash of red light. The storm ceased. The doll fell lifeless. Nia opened her eyes, human again, trembling. She looked at her mother, who was now standing perfectly still, her face calm, her eyes distant and dark. "Mama," she whispered. "Let's go home." Tumi smiled faintly, but her voice when she spoke was not her own. "Yes, child, let's go home." The next morning the village was silent. Even the roosters refused to crow. A faint fog hung low over the thatched roofs, curling like smoke over the fields. The baobab stood in the distance, taller than ever, its branches twisting skyward like the arms of something alive. And at the edge of the village, Tumi walked slowly toward it, her bare feet stirring the dust. She carried the doll in her hands, its once innocent wooden face now cracked, the carvings bleeding faint red lines as though it wept. Behind her trailed Nia, small and frightened, clutching a piece of her mother's cloth. "Mama," she whispered, "why are we going back there?" Tumi didn't answer. Her voice, if it was still hers, had grown quiet, hollow, distant. When she turned to look at Nia, her eyes shimmered faintly red. "We must return what was taken," she said. "We must end what began." By midday, word had spread through the village. Tumi was walking back to the cursed tree. People gathered in doorways, watching from afar. No one dared follow her, but everyone felt the tremor in the air, the sense that something ancient had awakened. Old Bobankoro stood at the edge of the maize field, whispering a prayer as he heard the whispers in the wind. Nokwi, she's not finished yet. As Tumi and Nia reached the clearing, the sky began to turn the color of smoke. Birds shrieked and fled from the branches, circling wildly overhead. The baobab loomed before them, massive and pulsating with a dark aura. The ground at its base was scorched black from where the spirit had emerged the night before. Tumi stopped, lowering the doll to the earth. "This is where it ends," she murmured. Nia stepped forward, clutching her mother's arm. "Mama, please, I'm scared." Tumi turned, her expression momentarily soft. She brushed a hand across Nia's cheek, a mother's touch, tender and trembling. But when she spoke again, her voice wavered between two tones, her own and Nokwi's. "Be brave, my child. For the dead do not forgive easily." Then, she placed the doll beneath the baobab. The wind began to rise. At first, it was a soft whisper, but soon it roared, circling them like an invisible storm. The branches of the baobab creaked, bending and twisting as if writhing in pain. Dust lifted from the ground, forming spirals that danced around Tumi and Nia. The doll began to tremble where it lay. Then suddenly it spoke. "You buried me once," it hissed. "You will not bury me again." The voice wasn't Nia's. It wasn't even Tumi's. It was something older, a voice that echoed from deep within the earth itself. The ground cracked open. A gust of heat erupted upward, carrying the smell of burnt soil and bone. And from the fissure beneath the baobab, Nokwi rose once more, her form taller, darker, more complete. Her body was made of roots and dust, her face carved in pain and vengeance. Her eyes found Tumi. "You carry me," she said. "You breathe with my lungs. You speak with my tongue. Yet you still resist me." Tumi's body shuddered violently. She fell to her knees, clutching her head. Her skin rippled as if something was moving beneath it. "No, you cannot have her," she cried. "You cannot have my daughter." But Nokwi smiled, a smile of centuries of grief and hatred. "Then you shall watch her suffer." Nia screamed as her mother's body convulsed. Black veins spread across Tumi's arms like cracks in stone. Her eyes rolled back, glowing crimson. The air filled with the sound of whispers, hundreds of voices murmuring Nokwi's curse in forgotten tongues. The baobab tree's trunk split open again, revealing within it a hollow glowing red, like a mouth to the underworld. The doll began to levitate, spinning in midair. "You freed me," Nokwi's voice thundered, "and now I will take what you love most, as they took what I loved." Lightning tore through the sky. The villagers, watching from a distance, fell to their knees in horror as the ground around the baobab erupted in fire. Smoke billowed upward, forming the shape of a woman's face. Screaming. Through the chaos, Tumi fought to speak, her own voice buried beneath Nokwi's fury. She looked at Nia, her child sobbing, clutching her arms. "Mama, please don't leave me." For a brief moment, Tumi's eyes turned normal again, soft brown, full of tears. "Run, my heart," she whispered. "Don't look back." But Nia refused. She threw her arms around her mother. And that was when Tumi realized the only way to end it was to return what the earth wanted. She forced herself to her feet. Her body trembled violently, every movement a struggle against the spirit within. She shouted into the storm. "Nokwi! You were betrayed by your people, but I am not them. Take me willingly and release my child." The spirit hesitated. For the first time her form wavered. The wind slowed. Nokwi's eyes, endless and hollow, locked onto Tumi's face. "Would you truly give your soul for her?" "Yes," Tumi said. "A mother always does." The spirit of Nokwi stretched her hand forward. Her long, vine-like fingers touched Tumi's heart. A blinding red light burst between them, so bright it turned night into day. The baobab began to shake violently. Its bark peeled away, revealing glowing roots beneath. Tumi screamed, but she didn't pull away. The doll lying at her feet cracked open. From it poured black smoke that rose into the sky, swirling around them both. Nia fell to the ground, crying, unable to reach her mother through the storm. "Mama!" she screamed again and again. Then suddenly silence. The wind stopped. The fire died. The baobab went still. Tumi's body slumped to the ground. The doll, now nothing more than ash, disintegrated into the wind. When the villagers arrived, the clearing was empty, except for Nia, kneeling beside her mother's still form. Her tears fell onto the soil, mixing with the red dust. Koro, the healer, stepped forward, his face grim. He lifted his staff and murmured words of protection over the girl. But when he looked up at the baobab, he froze. Something was different. The great tree had changed. Where there had once been rot and darkness, now its trunk glowed faintly, etched with markings that resembled two intertwined figures, a woman and a child. The villagers whispered, "Tumi has become one with Nokwi. The curse is broken. Or reborn." That night, as Nia lay beside her mother's grave beneath the baobab, a soft wind brushed through the branches. And within it, she heard a voice, gentle, familiar. "Hush now, my little one. I'm here." Nia opened her eyes. For a moment, she thought she saw her mother's silhouette, standing by the tree, smiling faintly. But when she blinked, it was gone. Only the rustling leaves remained, whispering lullabies in the language of the dead. Years later, travelers passing through the region would pause by that tree. They would notice how it hummed at night, a low, mournful song that echoed through the plains. The villagers came to believe it was not cursed anymore. They said it was watching over them. But every once in a while, a child wandering too close would claim they saw a little girl sitting beneath it, playing with a doll that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. And if anyone listened closely, they'd swear they could hear two voices singing softly together. "You freed me once, child, and now I will guard you forever." The days that followed the storm were heavy and long. The air in the village felt hollow, as though something sacred had been torn away and left a silence too deep for words. The soil near the baobab remained damp, darkened by the rain that had fallen the night Tumi died. Or rather, the night she merged with something older than death itself. No one entered that clearing for 7 days. Even the birds avoided the branches, and when the wind passed through the leaves, it carried a strange sound. Neither whisper nor moan, something between. On the 8th day, Koro led the elders and a small group of villagers back to the baobab. They went barefoot, carrying calabashes of water and palm oil, chanting softly to keep the spirits calm. When they reached the clearing, they found Nia sitting there, still quiet, her small hands folded on her lap. Her eyes were open, but she didn't blink much. She sat beside a small mound of earth, her mother's grave, and in her lap was the broken doll, half ash, half wood. She had reassembled what remained, tying the cracked pieces together with grass and cloth. Koro knelt beside her. "Child," he said softly, "you should not be here." Nia looked up. Her voice came out calm, too calm for a child who had seen such horror. "She told me to wait," she said. "She said the tree is watching now. And that we're safe." The old man exchanged glances with the others. None dared speak. When they looked at the baobab again, they saw that its trunk shimmered faintly in the sunlight. Deep within the wood, the intertwined carvings of Tumi and Nokwi were clearer now, not of rage and vengeance, but of sorrow and surrender. The healer bowed his head. "Then let it be," he murmured. "Let the spirits rest." Weeks passed. The rains came and went. The baobab grew new leaves, greener, denser, as if feeding on something beyond the soil. And the villagers began to speak of it differently. They no longer called it cursed. Instead, they called it the mother tree. Women began leaving small offerings beneath it, beads, milk, and bits of cloth for protection during childbirth. The strange thing was, those who prayed there were said to be blessed. A barren woman conceived. A fevered child awoke healthy after being carried to the roots. Even the crops near the baobab grew twice as strong. The fear faded, but not the awe. Because some nights, when the moon was full, travelers passing through the village would swear they heard a sound coming from the tree, the faint melody of a lullaby. A song sung in two voices, one old, one young. And always the children knew the words, though no one had ever taught them. Nia grew up quickly. By the time she was 15, she had her mother's quiet strength, and her strange gift. She could sense when storms were coming, when sickness was near, when a spirit lingered. Some feared her. Others came seeking her counsel. She rarely spoke of that night. But sometimes when she walked alone to the baobab, she'd whisper, "I know you're still here, Mama." And the branches would sway gently, even when the air was still. But something else began to happen. Each year, on the same night the storm had first come, the air around the baobab would grow heavy again. The leaves would tremble, and faint whispers would drift through the village. The elders said it was the spirits renewing their bond. Others said it was a warning. And Nia, she always felt a chill in her bones. Because no matter how many years passed, she still dreamed of the doll, whispering from beneath the earth. One night, years later, during the harmattan winds, a group of young men from a neighboring village came to Umuago. They had heard of the sacred baobab that brought blessings. They laughed at the tales, saying, "Superstition feeds fools." Despite the villagers' warnings, they walked to the clearing, drunk on palm wine and pride. One of them, bold and careless, picked up the half-buried remains of the doll. "This thing," he scoffed. "This is what you all fear." He tossed it aside. But as the doll hit the ground, the air changed. The wind died. The world went silent. And from the soil beneath their feet came a faint humming sound, like breathing. The men froze. Then, slowly, the ground at the base of the baobab began to move, as if something beneath it had stirred awake. The doll, lying a few feet away, turned its head, ever so slightly, toward them. The men fled screaming into the night. By morning, only 3 of them returned. The 4th was never found. Only his footprints remained, leading to the baobab, and stopping there. After that night, no one dared mock the stories again. The baobab once more became a place of reverence and warning. Nia, now a woman grown, became the village's new guardian. She kept her mother's name alive, teaching children to respect what lies unseen. Sometimes she would tell them, "When my mother faced the witch, she did not fight her. She gave her peace. But peace, children, must be kept, or it fades." And every full moon, Nia would light a small oil lamp and place it beneath the tree. She would sit there, humming softly, the same lullaby her mother used to sing. And somewhere deep inside the wood, 2 faint lights would glow, one red, one gold, pulsing gently like 2 hearts still beating together. On the anniversary of Tumi's death, Nia dreamt again. In her dream, she stood before the baobab, which now reached far into the heavens. The wind carried the smell of rain and ash. From its roots emerged 2 figures, one of light, one of shadow. Nakwi, the witch, no longer looked monstrous. Her face was calm, her eyes clear. Beside her stood Tumi, her mother, radiant, holding Nia's childhood doll, now whole again and glowing faintly. "We are bound," Nakwi said softly. "Not by hate," Tumi added, "but by love and grief." They extended their hands, and the baobab's branches bloomed, for the first time ever, with white flowers that glowed like moonlight. When Nia awoke, she ran to the clearing, and there she saw it. The great tree had indeed flowered, and beneath it lay a single perfect doll, carved from pale wood, with a gentle smile. She picked it up and held it close. For the first time since childhood, she didn't feel afraid. Full moon the moral. Every curse is born from a broken heart. The elders of Umuago still tell the story, not as a tale of horror, but as a lesson. They say, when grief is left to rot, it becomes a curse. When love is buried, it calls out from the ground. And when the living forget the pain of the past, the dead will rise to remind them. The baobab still stands today. Vast, ancient, alive. They call it the Tree of Two Mothers. And sometimes when the wind is soft and the moon full, travelers swear they hear singing, two voices intertwined carrying through the dark. A lullaby for the lost. And that is the tale of the doll buried beneath the Baobab tree. A story of love, loss, and the price of forgotten grief. Tell me, if you found a doll buried beneath a sacred tree, would you dare touch it? Or would you walk away and never look back? If this story gave you chills, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends, so they too can feel the whispers of the Baobab tonight. And remember, every story hides a warning. Every curse begins with a choice. And every soul returns to the roots.